Welcome in to the first ever live edition of the Ravens Rundown. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we are going to discuss the latest Baltimore Ravens news and rumors, those surrounding the possibility of Baltimore signing Allen Lazard in free agency, as we have some details from Heavy.com that we will get to. Also, we will discuss the possibility of the Ravens drafting Kelee Ringo out of the University of Georgia. We'll discuss team needs for Baltimore, and we'll have a live Q&A mailbag as well. If you want to be a part of the mailbag segment, you can super chat to get at the front of the line, or you can use the hashtag Ravens to get on the mailbag show. As you guys file in, we get this show on the road. I want you guys to know, tell me this, how long have you been a Ravens fan? Let us know in the comments section. We will shout you guys out here to see who's all in the house today, to see who's all a Ravens fan. This is kind of our build-up portion of the show where we get things started and kind of interact and get the show going, and then we'll dive into our segments here in just a bit. I see Jacob Taylor is in the chat saying thanks for the great content. Jacob, thanks for watching. Hopper is here saying draft Jordan Addison. That could be a possibility potentially for Baltimore. They need some receiver help. Addison would be a very interesting. I would not be opposed to the idea of Jordan Addison. Jacob Taylor checks in, says Hopper facts. Yeah, okay. So how long have you been a Ravens fan? Tell us in the chat as I bring in my colleague who's going to be hanging out with us today, Nicholas Roloff, known as Rolly around here, for the first ever Ravens show. Rolly, good to have you here. Ravens, live, first time. Welcome to our maiden voyage of this show.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here with Ravens Nation, Ravens fans, the flock. I also do think that is one of the coolest nicknames. Like, we're the flock.
Yes.
That's fire.
That is fire. You're absolutely right about that, Rolly. I see Yazel says, thank you for everything. Well, thank you. Because you guys have grown this channel to what it is, we can do more live shows like this. And the plan is, assuming today goes well, that we'll be with you about every other Tuesday with this live show and bringing you the latest happenings in your favorite team and just have a good time today. That's the plan, and we'll see where things go from there. Jacob says, sup, Rolly.
What's up, Jacob?
Jacob, good to see Jacob's kind of owning the chat here so far to this point as we get things started. Hopper says, I just want a Rolly.
Yeah. Listen, I got this nickname in high school. I was like, 5-6 years ago? So maybe that song might have had influence on my nickname being Rolly. And now that's all I go for.
Rolly. Oh, man. Jillian says, been a fan since they went to the first Super Bowl. My father introduced me to them, watched them in the first Super Bowl against the Giants. Didn't know what was going on at the time, but was satisfied. Got satisfied with the dub with a Super Bowl victory there. Walt says, what would doing a deal similar to Pat Mahomes' deal with Lamar do in terms of salary cap? Would it get more room to sign a veteran wide receiver or still draft one? Walt, here's the deal. We are going to do a mailbag coming up later. If you use the hashtag Ravens or Super Chat with that same question, then we can get it on the mailbag portion. We will do this mailbag later on. That's how you can interact and you can get on the show, our mailbag segment that we'll do coming up later. So for questions like that, I can dive into more detail and we can answer those fully. If you got a question for me, if you got a question for Rolly too, we can put it on our mailbag segment that we'll get to coming up later on. I see we have about 25 people watching so far. We're building this thing as we go along. So as you guys file in here, hit that like button. We're at 5 likes right now. Show us some love. That helps out the YouTube algorithm. We can get this show out to more people so they can join us and we can have a good time with fellow members of the flock. The million-dollar question of the offseason for the Baltimore Ravens is simply this. Should the Ravens trade Lamar Jackson? And I will be talking about this later on, so let me ask Rolly and get his opinion on this here. But it's pretty simple, but it's a long path, let's put it that way. In terms of this, you are not going to let him go in free agency. You are going to franchise tag him if you can't come up with a deal before the deadline. We talked about this last week here in the channel. There were reports that the Ravens intend on franchise tagging Lamar Jackson. So then that gives you a window. Do you keep on fighting and hope to get a new extension done? Or do you just say, you know what, enough's enough, you trade him and you move on? What do you do? Type T for trade, type K for keep. Let us know. Rolly, what would you do if you're the Ravens with Lamar?
Well, obviously, if I'm the Ravens, I want to keep Lamar Jackson. But I think it's a 3-step checklist that you're going to have to look at if you're the Ravens front office. So obviously, step 1 is, can we extend Lamar Jackson right now? Obviously, based off reports we've been seeing from NFL national reporters and beat reporters that cover the Ravens, that they are not really close to a deal at this point. So then after that, we move to checklist number 2, which is Lamar Jackson going to play on the tag that you gave him?
I would guess no, but we don't have a definitive answer.
We don't know for sure, but if he tells you he will not play on the tag that you gave him, and you're going to waste the 42, because it was 40 mil, right? Because the exclusive.
40 million, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're going to waste 40 million on a player that isn't playing, I would then trade him. So step 1, obviously you want to extend him, but if he says no to any deal you're offering and you're not willing to increase the money, guaranteed money, the base salary, the years, whatever the problem is, then it goes down to the tag. If he refuses to play on the tag, then you trade him. You have to, because you can't just eat $40 million for no one and then have him leave in 2 years when he's not tagged for nothing. So I might as well trade him if he refuses to play on the tag and you can't come to an agreement on a deal.
Now, here's where I agree with a lot of what you said, Rolly, but where my issue with the Ravens organization on all this is, it's the same issue Lamar has, the guaranteed money element of all this. Reports were out this week that the Ravens were hundreds of millions of dollars off in guaranteed money from what Lamar Jackson wanted. And I understand why you may be hesitant when it comes to guaranteed money. I get that, especially with that the NFL, traditionally speaking, has not been great about guaranteed money as opposed to some of the other major sports. But for me, I look at, if I'm the Ravens, I'm giving Lamar the guaranteed money, making that happen to do what it takes. That, to me, is what I look at as being the thing that is standing in the way of getting a deal done, is where that guaranteed money is at right now. And I would like to see the Ravens come to a middle ground of some sorts to give that said guaranteed money so we don't have to worry about the franchise tag or a trade and all this. Just give the man his money. Personally, that's the way I look at it. But we'll dive into that more. I see Kenneth says keep. Kimberly says keep. Jacob says keep. Zay says keep as well. Yaz says trade, sadly. Kimberly says hope to keep Lamar Jackson. Kenneth says, I've been saying all along we should get Allen Lazard. We're going to be talking about Allen Lazard here in just a moment as a potential target for the Ravens to sign this offseason. Who should the Ravens draft at 22 overall? That selection, we're going to be discussing the possibility today of them signing Kelee Ringo out of Georgia, who is projected to be one of the top 5 cornerbacks in this draft. CBS has him going to the Ravens. We'll discuss that coming up in just a few moments from right now. Before we get to our first segment, let's remind the folks how they can get involved in the mailbag so they can get their questions in. You can super chat us, hit that $sign below the chat box, or use the hashtag Ravens. If you use the $sign below the chat box and super chat us, your question is guaranteed to get on the show and will get on screen first before anybody else's. If you use the hashtag Ravens, then you might be waiting a minute to get your question in, but nonetheless, we'll get as many questions as we can in. So I've seen people already asking, send some questions in the chat, whatnot. That's how you can get on the mailbag, and we'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. Use that hashtag Ravens in the chat box. I'm going to show it to you right now, just how to do this. Putting a demo question in there. Hashtag Ravens. Does Tyler like ice cream? This is just to show you how this works, folks. So there it is. There's a question there. Hashtag Ravens. Does Tyler like ice cream? And then I can see that, and we can pull that on screen, and I could say, come back on screen and say, yes, I do indeed love ice cream. See, there it is, right there on your screen. Just an example of how this works to make this easy on you guys. Use that hashtag Ravens. You do that, boom, just like that. Rolly can put the graphic on screen so we can get to as many questions as possible. I do enjoy ice cream. What's your favorite flavor ice cream, Rolly?
Okay, so I'm going uber specific. It's from Ben & Jerry's, the Tonight Dough. It's
the Jimmy Fallon
Jimmy
ice cream.
Fallon ice cream. If I'm just getting hard ice cream that I want to eat at my crib or my home, that's what I'm getting. If I'm going out, though, I'm probably just get chocolate and vanilla twist cone soft serve. It's elite.
You can't go wrong with that.
But not every place has soft serve, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm a cookie dough fan myself.
That's similar to the Tonight Dough. The Tonight Dough just adds a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, I like cookie dough, maybe some chocolate almond ice cream from Brahms.
That's an interesting one, chocolate almond.
So you guys will, as we build this thing and this channel goes along, you'll get to know me and Rolly a little bit more. My home, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma originally, and in Tulsa, I grew up eating Brahms ice cream, and Brahms had these big ice cream stores with a grocery store inside as well as a restaurant. And I got to tell you, just incredible, the Brahms chocolate almond ice cream my mom raised me on, so good. Let's see. Who do you got in the Super Bowl? Chiefs or Eagles? Type KC for the Chiefs. Type PHI for the Philadelphia Eagles. And Tony, I see you use the hashtag Ravens. Perfect. That is how it's done. And Tony, you will get your question on the mailbag when we get to that. Use that hashtag Ravens, and you can send in your questions. We'll get those on the mailbag coming up in just a bit. Chiefs or Eagles? Who do you got? There we go. King, I see another one in there. You got to figure it out as well. Keep those questions going. We'll get to that in our mailbag segment coming up later. Chiefs or Eagles? I'll be honest, I'm rooting for the Chiefs. I want to see the Chiefs win, represent the AFC. That's why I want them to win, obviously. We need the AFC to represent strong here. But I think Philadelphia is going to get the job done and win it. I got Philly 34-31, and a very tight game comes down to the end. Rolly, what do you think about the Super Bowl?
I also got the Eagles winning. I think they've got the best team overall. The Chiefs have the advantage in 3 spots. Yeah, they're important spots: quarterback, tight end, head coach. But I think when you look at the defensive lines, the offensive lines, the secondaries, the wide receivers, the linebackers, running backs, I mean, it all favors the Eagles. I think it's going to be a close game, just like Tyler said. I would go 30-27.
Okay.
That is my prediction there.
Okay, 30-27. I like that. Let's see, get more questions coming in with that hashtag Ravens. You want to be a part of the mailbag, use that hashtag Ravens or a super chat, and we'll get you on the show. First segment, let's talk about the possibility of the Ravens adding Allen Lazard. Also, we will discuss a potential draft candidate for the Ravens. That would be Kelee Ringo. We'll discuss all that and more. Our poll question today: should the Ravens sign Allen Lazard? So far, 76% of you say yes, 24% say no. Continue to get those votes in on the poll question. We'll answer those. Seeing more questions coming in. You guys are doing a great job of that. Hashtag Ravens to get your questions in, or super chat, and we'll get you on the show. I wonder who's going to be the first ever super chat. Is it going to happen, our first ever live show super chat? Is that going to be today, or are we going to have to say that for another day? Potentially speaking, we'll keep in mind of that. If somebody wants to be the first super chatter, you will automatically be a Baltimore Ravens flock MVP. All right, let's go ahead and get rolling here with our first segment, news and rumors, as we're talking Allen Lazard and Kelee Ringo right now here on Ravens Rundown. It is the Ravens Rundown. It is powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we have the latest Baltimore Ravens news and rumors, those surrounding Allen Lazard potentially joining the Ravens this offseason. Also, the newest mock draft from CBS Sports projects the Ravens picking up Kelee Ringo, the cornerback from the Georgia Bulldogs. We'll tell you everything you need to know about Ringo and more coming up in just a few moments from right now. Before we get to that, though, folks, the Ravens not playing in the Super Bowl this week, unfortunately. And I got to tell you, I've been missing some Ravens football here the last few weeks. I'm sure you feel the same way as well. So here's what I want you to do. If you miss Ravens football, if you want the Ravens to come back and come back with vengeance here soon, can't wait for the offseason to already end, go ahead and like today's video. If you're a Ravens fan, you love Ravens football, like that video, and we'll get started with today's show. Heavy.com is suggesting the Ravens not only should be a candidate for Allen Lazard, but they need to sign Allen Lazard, the Green Bay Packers wide receiver. And Allen Lazard, an interesting story, a guy that was undrafted out of Iowa State, went to the practice squad of the Jacksonville Jags, and now has found a home in Green Bay and has gotten better every single year with the Packers. Here's the report from Heavy.com. The veteran market offers the quickest route to fixing the biggest weakness on the Ravens offense, with Green Bay Packers free agent Allen Lazard named as somebody who fits Baltimore's offense identity. Lazard possesses the size and toughness the Ravens lack at receiver, but the identity of their offense could change following Greg Roman stepping down as coordinator. More on Allen Lazard. Started 37 games in the last 3 seasons for Green Bay. And this past year, he had career highs in yards, receptions, and touchdowns. He is coming off the best season of his entire NFL career to this point. The question then becomes, was that the ceiling for Allen Lazard, what we saw this past year, or is there still more on the table potentially for Allen Lazard? That answer, we don't know at the moment. The numbers of the last 4 years from Lazard include nearly 800 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns this past year. In 2021, had 513 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. 2020 with 451 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2019 with 477 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Allen Lazard, a need for Baltimore. It sounds intriguing. I like the idea personally of bringing in Allen Lazard. At this point, I like the idea of just bringing in any help you can get to the Ravens receiving room at this point in time. What say you? Let us know in the comments section. Should the Ravens sign Allen Lazard? Type S for sign, type P for pass. You might get an ad break. If so, take advantage of it. Get your votes in. S for sign, P for pass if you think the Ravens should sign Allen Lazard or not. Kelee Ringo, should the Ravens draft the Georgia cornerback with their 22nd overall selection in the 2023 NFL Draft? A new mock draft from CBS Sports is projecting that the Ravens take Ringo with the selection. There's a few implications to think about with this. We already knew going into this offseason that the Ravens had a need at corner, but you have to think if they make this move, if they were to draft Ringo, number one, that probably means that Lamar Jackson is coming back and that you get a deal done to keep him around. And then number two, it probably means Marcus Peters is not coming back, that Ringo essentially serves as the de facto replacement of sorts for Marcus Peters. Here's Ryan Wilson of CBS on the pick of Ringo to the Ravens. The Georgia to first-round pipeline continues. A year after 5 Bulldogs went in round 1, expect a handful this time around 2. Ringo is a long physical corner who has matched up against some of the best players in the country, and he sure has with what he's been a part of with Georgia winning back-to-back national titles there. We'll have more on Ringo in just one moment. Before we do, Ravens Rundown is sponsored by Athletic Greens. I take AG1, Buy Athletic Greens literally every day. Get comprehensive and convenient daily nutrition at athleticgreens.com/chatsports. I gave AG1 a try because I wanted better gut health and wanted a supplement that actually tastes great. I take AG1 every morning, and it makes me feel ready to take on my day. I came into this year wanting to get healthier, and starting my year on AG1 has helped me do just that. I take it every morning, and I feel the best I've ever felt. Covering my nutritional bases for the day literally couldn't be easier, which is why I trust Athletic Greens. I just mix one small scoop of AG1 with water and drink it first thing each morning. Done. I also like that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with the highest quality sourced ingredients. Win-win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free one-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/chatsports. That's athleticgreens.com/chatsports. Check it out. The link is also in the comments and the description of today's video. Athletic Greens, I got to tell you, just 3 easy things. Promotes gut health, supports immunity, and boosts energy. Sign up, get Athletic Greens today. Tell them that Tyler Jones and Chat Sports sent you, and you'll be glad you did. Now, back to the idea of potentially bringing in Ringo to the Baltimore Ravens. And I got to tell you this, drafting a cornerback makes a lot of sense, especially if you're going to move on from Marcus Peters. You look at the cornerback room with this Ravens team, and you can see beyond Marlon Humphrey, there are some flaws there. Marcus Peters is getting older. Kyle Fuller you didn't have for most of this year. Brandon Stevens is very raw. Don't know how much you're going to get out of that. You have to find corners, and you have to find corners more than likely early for this Ravens team to fill the void that is there with this group of just beyond Marlon Humphrey of finding other options. We saw early on in the season this group got torched a lot when they faced some great offenses. I think we all have the memory of that fourth quarter against Miami when Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill just burned these guys time and time again. You have to have other guys. Look, you have great safeties with what you bring to the table with Marlon Humphrey at corner, obviously, but with Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton and all those guys there, that safety end is taken care of. But you need help with those corner spots. Drafting a corner makes sense. But I still have hesitation on one thing. More of that in just a second. Before we do, should the Ravens draft Kelee Ringo? If you think they should, type Y for yes. If you think they shouldn't draft Kelee Ringo, type N for no. Let us know in the comments section what you're feeling, if the Ravens should draft Kelee Ringo or not. Folks, we are covering the Baltimore Ravens each and every day with the latest happenings on your favorite team. Subscribe now for free. Doesn't cost you a thing. We are all over the latest Ravens news and rumors, also free agency, trades. We're counting down the draft and more. Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. The Ravens Rundown by Chat Sports. Subscribe now, youtube.com/RavensTV. Ringo, we mentioned, won 2 national championships with the Bulldogs the past 2 seasons. In this last year, compiled 42 tackles with 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and 7 passes defended. Pretty good numbers for a guy that was second-team All-SEC. But I'll say this. I like the idea of picking a corner, but Kelee Ringo would be a reach at the 22 position, quite frankly. When you look at the best corners on the draft board, according to ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr., I would just be shocked if Kelee Ringo is the only corner that's left at 22 here. Joey Porter Jr. is solid. Christian Gonzalez is solid. Deonte Banks has moved up a lot of boards. Nothing against Kelee Ringo at all, but there are better options available as far as I'm concerned there, assuming the Ravens stay at 22. Ringo is a very good player, could be a late first round, second round guy, but at 22, to me, that seems to be a little bit of a reach potentially for the Ravens. But I like the idea of drafting a corner, but that one just seems a bit too high for Kelee Ringo. I would go with somebody else, preferably if Porter or Gonzalez or somehow are still around. That, to me, would be a win potentially for the Ravens. And you talk about irony. If you brought in Joey Porter's kid to the Ravens? That would be pretty interesting. Before we go, quick question. What is the biggest need this draft for the Ravens? We've talked about the wide receiver spot today. We've talked about corner today. What's the biggest need? Tell us in the comments section and let us know what you think the biggest need is for this Ravens team in this upcoming draft. As always, you can follow me on social media, Twitter and Instagram, at Tyler Jones Live, talking about your Baltimore Ravens there. And I'll see you next time, right here on the Ravens Rundown. All right, that is one segment down and in the books. We are going to do a mailbag here in just a second. Use the hashtag Ravens or Super Chat to get on the mailbag show if you want to be a part, or that Super Chat will get you to the very front of the line. And using the hashtag Ravens, that makes things easier for Rolly to sort through all the questions there. So, Rolly, you've been monitoring the questions. We're getting some questions. We can use a couple more, right? You know.
We could always use a couple more. Listen, there I saw 3 or 4 in there, but listen, we want to get the most questions. We want to hear from the flock, offseason, next season. So let us know. Use hashtag Ravens. We'll get it on the show.
Simple as that. Get those questions in. We'll get to those coming up in just a few moments from right now. Today, we're going to have a little fun here between segments here on Ravens Rundown. It is National Fettuccine Alfredo Day. Very curious out there, flock. Answer this for me in the chat. What is your favorite kind of pasta? For me, it is lasagna. And I got a little story for you, Rolly. So last night, a friend of mine was in town. We went to dinner, go to this rooftop bar, and I ordered lasagna. And I was watching the Kansas-Texas basketball game, Big Monday last night. There's about 5 minutes gone by in the first half when I order my lasagna, which is my personal favorite pasta dish. And there was 5 minutes to go in the game. My lasagna hadn't showed up, wasn't there, and we decided to leave. And so I didn't get to eat my favorite pasta dish. I didn't get to have lasagna last night. So I've been thinking about lasagna all day.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Where were you?
I was here in Dallas at CBS Sports Studios. I won't out this place.
Okay.
Because I don't want to make people feel bad or whatever. They were short-staffed. They were short-handed. They admitted that ahead of time, but got waited too long. So lasagna is my favorite. Didn't get to have my lasagna last night. What's your favorite, Rolly?
You know, mine's a little different. Not going to be your classic spaghetti or linguine or penne. I'm going gnocchis with vodka sauce.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Get a little creative there.
If that is done right, gnocchis and vodka sauce, incredible.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
Kenneth says chicken Alfredo with fettuccine.
Listen, that's a great choice.
Yes. Very good call there. Who else? What are some of the favorite pasta dishes out there? Let us know. Also, get your questions in using the hashtag Ravens or a Super Chat. Will get you in on our Q&A that we're about to start here in just a few moments from right now. Rolly, we all ready for this mailbag here?
Yeah, we can get it done.
All right. And as the mailbag's going along, too, if you think of another question that you want to ask, you can still submit questions while we're in the middle of the mailbag. So you can use that hashtag Ravens or Super Chat, and you can still get on the mailbag as we're going along with it throughout this time being. If you want a follow-up question to something I said or whatever it may be, send those in right away, and we'll get you on the mailbag portion of the show. But, Rolly, we'll go ahead and get started. Mailbag time here on the Ravens Rundown. It is mailbag time here on the Ravens Rundown. Tyler Jones here with you. Appreciate you joining us. And you may be wondering, how do I get involved in these mailbags? Well, this one here comes courtesy of our live show that we bring you now each and every other Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. But if you subscribe to the channel, then you can send your questions in, whether it's through the community tab or on the live show, either way, and we'll answer your questions. Whatever you have about your Baltimore Ravens, what do you want to know? Well, we're here to answer those questions for you. Use the hashtag Ravens Super Chat to be a part of the live mailbags, and we'll get to your questions. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question in the mailbag this week Hashtag Ravens, what do you think the Ravens need to do to improve their offense? Well, for me, when I look at this Ravens team, you have what I believe in Lamar Jackson is a franchise quarterback. I would still keep Lamar and pay him the money it takes to keep him in town. That's priority number one. And then number two, I look at you have your running backs with J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards and company. You have your tight ends with Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar. Those guys are really good. But you need help at the receiver spot. I'll be honest, when Demarcus Robinson is leading your team in receiving among wide receivers, that's a problem. And I know some of you are going to say, well, Rashad Bateman was hurt. That's true. You're not wrong about that. But that's not good enough. You need help beyond just Rashad Bateman. Got to get more receivers. To me, that'll go a long ways. And I know some of you are saying to yourselves, well, this offense isn't suited for the wide receiver position. Well, that was the old offense under Greg Roman. I would expect that whoever the new offensive coordinator is for the Ravens, they are going to have to air it out a whole lot more and throw the football and use those receivers as much as they can. So that, to me, that's what I'm looking for this receiving core to improve and to get more involved. Next question from Hopper wants to know, should we trade back in draft Flowers? Trading back, you're already at 22. To me, what I'm looking at, if I'm trading back and you're already late within the draft, you better be getting a king's ransom of some sorts with that selection. You better be in a position where you are getting a pretty good trade package that you can't refuse. I like the idea of trading back when you are early on in the draft and you can still get another first-round pick potentially and maybe stockpile a pick for next year. But for me, it's got to be an offer that you can't refuse of some sorts if you find yourself trading back when you're already at 22. Stakes Subs writes, hashtag Ravens, if Lamar is traded and the Ravens have to draft a quarterback, who should it be? Well, let's think about this with this Ravens team in this situation. Okay? So the Ravens currently are at 22. And if, let's say, for all intents and purposes, if you don't get a first-round pick in the trades this year, or at least one that's higher than you're drafting, if that's your highest first-round pick, there might not be actually any top quarterbacks left by the time you draft at 22. So let's take it a step further. Let's say that you trade Lamar and you end up with a top 10 pick of sorts. Then it's Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, or Will Levis. To me, that's my personal power rankings, is Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, or Will Levis. But it's hard to imagine a scenario where the Ravens trade Lamar and then trade into a position where Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud are then still around. To me, I think realistically, you're looking at, okay, Will Levis, not my personal favorite compared to the other two, but I sure would take him over Anthony Richardson. That's, to me, my power ranking. If you're going to reset the clock when it comes to the quarterback position and move on from Lamar Jackson, my power ranking, I'm going Bryce Young 1, C.J. Stroud 2, Will Levis 3, and then a long gap down to Anthony Richardson as far as I'm concerned. That, to me, is what I'm looking at. If I'm the Ravens, that would be my hierarchy of sorts that I'm building upon when I'm looking at these quarterbacks potentially. So I'll say this, I like Young and Stroud a whole lot more than I do the other two, but Will Levis, I think, would be the one where you're saying, okay, well, at least we didn't have to deal with Anthony Richardson. Put it that way. What about Will Levis? What do you think about the idea of him being the guy if the Ravens do end up moving on from Lamar Jackson? You like the idea of Will Levis taking over in Baltimore? If you do, type D for draft. If you don't like that idea, type P for pass. Let us know in the comments section. D for draft, P for pass. Which way you leaning? Manuel writes, why not sign D-Hop or OBJ with the hashtag Ravens? Thank you for that question, Manuel. with D-Hop, you'd have to trade for him in that situation with where he's at. Obviously, he's not going to be a free agent and likely not cut. I've said for a long time I love the idea of potentially trading for DeAndre Hopkins. OBJ, he's a free agent. Obviously, he's been a free agent for a while. I'm okay with that idea, too, of potentially signing OBJ. Although both those guys are older receivers, D-Hop, you might have to give up a pretty significant amount. OBJ's not going to come cheap either. To me, Manuel, it's not a why not answer for me. I'm all in. I like the idea of bringing in either guy personally. So we'll see what they do. I think to fix this receiving room, you not only need to go young, but you need to get some veterans too. It's got to be a combination of sorts because this team, I don't think is far off from contending the AFC, but they got to get receiver help. Both guys I would be in favor of bringing to town and getting the help you need potentially. Today's edition of the Ravens Rundown is sponsored by Fume. We all have bad habits, and we certainly know how hard they can be to kick those bad habits. Our sponsor, Fume, is on a mission to accelerate humanity's breakup from the bad habits that consume far too many of us. Fume is a natural diffusive device that uses plants and behavioral science to help you trade out your negative habit for a positive one. I didn't expect much out of Fume when I got it, but the minty sensation is really powerful and really hits the back of the throat. The Journey Pack comes with 3 unique flavors for you to enjoy: maple pepper, crisp mint, and white cranberry. Fume is not a vape. It's a non-electronic device designed to transform your negative habits. The easiest way to stop a bad habit is to switch to a positive one, and Fume is designed perfectly to do just that. Head to tryfume.com/chatsports. Use code chatsports to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com/chatsports. Use code chatsports to save an additional 10% off of your order today. Fume, one of our newest partners here at Chat Sports, and I got to tell you, it's a great deal. Go ahead and get yours now while supplies last. There's 3 unique flavors. You're going to love them. I can tell you that right now. Let's get back to the mailbag here. A few more questions. Walt writes in, #Ravens. Would signing Lamar to a deal similar to Pat Mahomes free up the ability to sign a free agent wide receiver and draft one as well? Walt, that's a great question. I'll be honest, I'm not much of a cap guy when it comes to, figure out how the math works, making your money work for you, in the words of Dave Ramsey. But I'll say this. What we've seen, what Kansas City was able to do, they've already adjusted Patrick Mahomes' contract, even shortly after he signed, to create the flexibility to move, to be able to sign other guys potentially. And so with Lamar, you could defer some money down the line and try to make things flexible of some sorts potentially. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be a lot you pay Lamar. So maybe I don't have a definite answer on that, but I would guess that if you commit to Lamar, you are committing to going all in, that you're going to try to find ways to make your money work for you to bring in more talent to that receiving core, Walt, as far as I'm concerned. Lamar writes, oh man, we got a hater in here, a Falcon fan. This should be interesting. Who is the most likely team to land Lamar if he's traded? Honestly, I'm not trying to, make you feel good. I promise you that much. Lamar is a Falcon. But I would say the Atlanta Falcons are probably the most likely team because they have the most assets that they could potentially give up. You think about this. If you trade with Atlanta, you're getting him out of the AFC. That's a plus. And then, 2, they have draft capital to deal with. They got young talent. They have even a young quarterback. You could still pull away not only some draft picks, but maybe a Drake London, a Kyle Pitts, a Desmond Ridder, somebody to that effect, potentially speaking, beyond just draft capital itself. So for me, Atlanta is the team that makes the most sense if a trade is going to go down. I still don't think a trade is going to happen, but at this point in time, Atlanta seems like the team that would be most likely to be able to bring in Lamar when it comes to the trade market. But the other part of that, too, is Kind of like with the Deshaun Watson negotiations a year ago, what is the team willing to give the guaranteed money? We haven't heard exactly if the Falcons or the Raiders or who of these teams wants to step out and give the guaranteed money that Lamar wants. Something to think about there. Will Lamar Jackson play for the Ravens in 2023? John Harbaugh says there's a 200% chance that he will. What do you think? Will Lamar be a Raven? If you think he will, type Y for yes. If not, type in for no. Let us know in the comment section. Y for yes, in for no if Lamar is back in Baltimore next year. Got time for a couple more questions here. Let's see what King has to say. Hashtag Ravens. Could you see the Ravens trading out of the, I think that's supposed to be draft, for a star wide receiver? Yeah, potentially. Potentially speaking, yeah, they very well could trade out of the draft and find a star receiver of some sorts. And it all comes down to paying. Here's the other thing, though, when we talked about paying. Remember, you've already paid Roquan Smith. And so is there enough money to go around, kind of like what we talked about in the last question, to pay Lamar and then potentially another receiver too? That's a lot, potentially. I could see the Ravens making a move of some sorts, but there are a lot of loopholes, a lot of things to work through before we potentially get to that point. Steven writes, hi, Steven. What should we do about Marcus Peters? Personally, I think it's time to move on from Marcus Peters. I have seen Marcus Peters his whole career. I remember his time back in Kansas City and to what he did with the Rams, now with the Ravens, and he struggled with injuries. He's always been a boom or bust guy. He's either getting you the big plays, the interceptions, or he's giving up the big plays. And Marcus Peters, as he gets older, things are not going to get better for him. I think it's time now to look at your other options, whether it's in the draft or maybe it's free agency, whatever it is, and move on from Marcus Peters potentially. Look, like we've talked about earlier, there's not enough money to pay everybody. Marcus Peters, that number 2 spot, I think this is the time to move on and find somebody else potentially to fill that role for Marcus Peters there. Steven, nothing against Marcus Peters at all, but just at this point, I think it's time to move on from him. What do you say about that? Do you agree or disagree with that sentiment of bringing back Marcus Peters? I say no. I think he'd cost too much, and he's getting older, and he's dealt with injuries. What do you say? If you think they should re-sign Marcus Peters, type R for re-sign. If you think they should move on, type M for move on. Let us know in the comments section what you think about that. Subscribe to the channel. We're doing these mailbags. We're covering the Ravens each and every day with news and rumors. We're counting down to the draft, also free agency, trades, and more. It's all in one place. If you love the Ravens, you got to subscribe. Doesn't cost you a thing, and we'll see you next time here on the Ravens Rundown. All right, I got one more segment to go. We're going to be talking about team needs for the Ravens in just one moment. But I want to know, as we get to know our audience a little bit here, who is your favorite Raven of all time? Of all the Ravens that have ever put on the uniform, who comes to mind as your favorite to ever play for this team? Rolly, there's so many different ways you could go. The obvious answers, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Ed Reed. But I got to say, I don't think you can go wrong with an elite quarterback like Joe Flacco.
Is Joe Flacco elite? The age-old question.
Of course, yeah.
But if I had to pick one, I would pick Ed Reed. He was just, I think, the most fun to watch. I mean, Ray Lewis was fun too, but Ed Reed, ball hawking, laying you out when you're coming across the middle of the field. When you think Ravens-Steelers rivalry, the first two people that come to mind are Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, at least on the Ravens side of the ball.
Right.
So I just think Ed Reed was so good, man. He was awesome to watch. That's who I like to watch the most.
That's a good answer. Let's see. Hopper says Ed, but right now Marlon Humphrey. Let's see. Jackson says Ray Lewis. Kenneth says Mark Andrews. And Tucker Matt was a good too. Good answers there. Let us know in the chat. Who was your favorite Raven? And we'll shout them out. We'll shout you out if you tell us who your favorite Raven of all time is. One more segment on deck here on the rundown today. We are going to be talking about team needs. What do the Ravens need to address this offseason here in 2023 to make their roster better, and who are some possible options for the Ravens to improve this team in 2023? We will get to that here in just a second. Nicholas Roloff worked very hard on the graphics for this specific segment, so shout out to Rolly for making it happen. Brandon Tillman says Ray Lewis. Baltimore Get Up says the Goose. Rest in peace. You know, the Goose, Tony Siragusa. I remember Tony specifically from his time on the NFL on Fox, but he was just in that the Bullies of Baltimore 30 for 30 that came out on Sunday night. I'll be honest, I haven't gotten the chance to watch that yet, but that is on my list of things to do this weekend. Did you get a chance to watch that yet, Rolly?
Nah, I wasn't able to. It came out Sunday night, I believe.
Yeah.
I didn't have the time Sunday night to watch it, but I do got to get to it at least this week.
Okay. Yeah, I'll report back later after I've seen the movie and see what I think about that. Tanya says I want Keenan Allen, but Allen is good. John says Jamal Lewis. Guy says from Newark says Ed Reed. Bald Guy says Derek Mason. Kenneth says, this is a funny answer, Broly. Ray Rice before he got in trouble.
Yeah. I do got to say, though, Derek Mason was a great answer from
Yes.
Bald Guy 101.
That's an elite answer. I like that. Also, before we start this final mailbag segment, I don't know how many of you guys are subscribed to the channel. I'm going to put the sub link in the chat. We're covering the Ravens every day. Chris McAllister says, John. And it doesn't cost you a thing. Here is the sub link right now. If you are subscribed or you're just now subscribing, let us know. Type me and we'll shout you out. But our mailbag segment we just finished. Now we're about to do our final segment. We're talking team needs for the Ravens. That's coming up next. Rolly, we all good there? All right, here we go. Final segment. Let's talk team needs here on the Ravens Rundown. It is the Ravens Rundown by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Appreciate you joining us. On today's show, we are going to talk about the team needs for the Ravens. What do they need to address this offseason, and what are some potential options the Ravens could be looking at? We'll explain all of that and more in just 1 second. Before we do, folks, we are closing in on 9,000 subscribers here on the channel, about 275 away from doing so, but we need your help to get there. If you love the Ravens, you want more Ravens content, this is the channel for you. And as we grow this channel, we're going to be able to do more things. We have a live show now every other Tuesday because the flock wanted more Ravens content. We're able to deliver. And so if we keep on growing, then we can do more watch parties throughout the year and have a good time. So if you love your Ravens, subscribe now for free. Doesn't cost you a thing, and we'll get started with today's show. The Ravens, I'll say this. They are a good football team, okay? They were in the playoffs, right? And they've had terrible luck when it's come to injuries the last 2 seasons. I believe the last 2 years would have been a lot different had they been healthier. I think most people feel that same way. And so with that being said, this is a team that when you address these needs that they have, you are closer to the top than you are the bottom. One problem, though, the AFC is still pretty dang good. And so you have to get the top really, really good and shore up some things. And so with that said, we're going to go over all these team needs and potential options for the Ravens to address. Obviously, you have to start with the receiver position. You moved on from Hollywood Brown last year, and you didn't replace him necessarily. And the Ravens paid quite the price for that last year. Rashad Bateman obviously got hurt. We never saw anybody really step up and be the next man for that receiving core. Here's a few guys that come to mind for receivers that I would look at for the Ravens. And we compiled a list when we looked at draft, trade, and free agent candidates all in one. And for me, I first start off with draft stuff. I look at a guy like Quentin Johnston from TCU. He's the first guy that I think of for Baltimore that comes to mind of who I would like to see fill that role for this Ravens team and be an instant impact player. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, is arguably just as talented, but he did have the injury and missed most of last year. So slight edge to Quentin Johnston as far as I'm concerned. Number 3, Jordan Addison at USC. I like him too. If you're the Ravens, I think you're happy with any of these 3 guys. Whoever's available at 22, if you can bring any of those guys in, you're feeling pretty good about yourself that you found another young receiver there. But slight priority to Johnston, then Smith and Jigba, then Addison. At 4, that's where we go to the trade market potentially with DeAndre Hopkins of the Arizona Cardinals. D-Hop still got some good football left with it in him, but he won't be cheap because, remember, you have to pay him, also give up assets as well. And then there's Jacoby Myers of the New England Patriots. He'll be entering free agency. I would expect that he'll be back with the Patriots, but for now anyway, he is a very good option there when it comes to free agents that are available. Probably the best free agent receiver on the market. So, with that said, with the receiver position, who would you add of those 5 names we talked about or somebody else out there? Who would you consider bringing to the Baltimore Ravens this offseason? Let us know in the comments section. Give me one name you'd like to see the Ravens add. Number 2, let's talk the cornerback spot. Now, I'll say this. The Ravens, we saw this past season, got picked apart at times with their corners in the secondary. And with the Ravens' position, I prefer taking a wide receiver in the first round at 22, but if you don't, I like a couple of guys in this draft specifically. Joey Porter Jr. of Penn State, and I know that would be very ironic to see a Joey Porter in a Ravens uniform, but he's a terrific football player with Penn State. Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, another guy that I like a whole lot too. Both those guys, I think you would be very excited if you picked up in this draft if they're still hanging around at that 22 spot. But then after that, there starts to be a drop-off. So then we turn to the free agent market. That's where we could find James Bradbury from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's had a really nice bounce-back year after previously playing for the New York Giants. We'll see if Philly brings him back or not, but he's probably the best corner on the free agent market potentially there. Then we find Marcus Peters within Baltimore. I'll say this. This is no offense to Marcus Peters, but I would rather bring in any of those 3 before I would pay Marcus Peters and bring him back. Marcus Peters, this almost feels like a last resort ordeal. Marcus Peters is older. We've already seen him deal with the injury issues. For my CB2, my second corner, I'm doing the other 3, bringing those guys in before I'm bringing in Marcus Peters. But Marcus Peters is option 4, basically, at that point. And then there's William Jackson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sounds like that he could be a trade target, potentially Pittsburgh looking to move on from him. So, Marcus Peters, will he be in a Ravens uniform in 2023? What say you? Let me know in the comment section. Type Y for yes, type N for no. What do you think? Is Marcus Peters back in Baltimore next year? Let us know in the comments section. Today's show is presented by BetUS, the exclusive sportsbook partner of Chat Sports. If you go to chatsports.com/bet, enter the promo code chat125, you will get a 125% deposit bonus. Put $100 down, you get $125 to spend for free at chatsports.com/bet. Odds for the Super Bowl, very, very close. The Eagles just a 1-point favorite over the Kansas City Chiefs. Over-under is set at 51. Personally, I like the Eagles, but I more importantly like the over. I think we have a high-scoring game coming up on Sunday night. Get your bets in now. Get that 125% deposit bonus. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code chat125. Defensive tackle for the Ravens is also another need to keep in mind. And this one is very interesting. We have a little bit of everything when it comes to the defensive tackle spot. Free agency-wise, Javon Hargrave has been fantastic for Philadelphia. I think the Eagles are going to do everything they can to keep him in Philly, though, as far as I'm concerned. But nonetheless, if he hits free agency, that would be awesome to see him in a Ravens uniform. Speaking of free agents, Daron Payne, also another option. Potentially, we could see him go from one place in the DMV to another, make his way up to Baltimore. Daron Payne is going to be heavily desired for the Ravens at that point. Then we find Brian Breesy, the defensive tackle from Clemson. And I know what you're thinking. Wait, isn't Jalen Carter the best defensive tackle in this draft? Yes, he is, but there is going to be literally no way the Ravens are in a position to draft Jalen Carter. So we're not putting Jalen Carter on this list, barring some drastic change where the Ravens move up in the draft. That's just not happening. So we're not going to waste our time putting Jalen Carter on this list and go to Brian Breesy. Brian Breesy, we've seen him as projected top 10, maybe even at the very end of the first round potentially, but a very good football player. Ika, the defensive tackle from Baylor, another good one as well for the Ravens. Might be able to get him in the second round potentially if you made a move there to get a second-round pick. And then another free agent possibly is Dalvin Tomlinson of the Minnesota Vikings. So with that, at the defensive tackle spot, I have two more positions of need to get to, but got to hear from you first. You can only pick one at D tackle. Are you going with Javon Hargrave or are you going with Daron Payne? If you're going with Hargrave, type JH. If you're going with Daron Payne, type DP. Let us know in the comment section. JH for Javon Hargrave, DP for Daron Payne. All right, fourth on the team needs list, edge/outside linebacker is a big need for this Ravens team. And this one, there's a lot of different ways we could go to fill the edge and outside linebacker spots. Remember, the Ravens ended up with Justin Houston this past offseason, and he was awesome. Led the Ravens in sacks this past year, but Justin Houston is getting older. I'm not opposed at all to bring Justin Houston back, but there are some better options than Justin Houston potentially, although I don't think Justin Houston would cost you that much. Let's show you these potential better options than Justin Houston. Marcus Davenport, the edge rusher of the New Orleans Saints. One of the best players in all of free agency this year, going to be heavily desired. Had a down year in New Orleans. Part of it, I think, was the scheme. Let's go to the draft now. Now, kind of like what we talked about with Jalen Carter. Will Anderson is nowhere going to be available for the Ravens to take. That's not happening. So then we turn our attention to Andre Carter II, outside linebacker from Army. Yes, you heard that right. I did not stutter. Army. Andre Carter, what a football player this guy is. He's tough. He's mentally tough. He's a do-it-all guy. You'd love to have Andre Carter potentially in a Ravens uniform. Then also in the draft, Lucas Van Ness, the edge rusher out of Iowa. There are question marks about him potentially being undersized, but nobody's arguing about how good of a football player that he is, and he would certainly be in position for the Ravens to draft. We go to free agency for our next two names. Jadeveon Clowney, he's been with a few different teams over the years, but we've seen Jadeveon Clowney still play at a high level and play well wherever he's been and adapt to the situations that he's been presented. Melvin Ingram, he's been on 3 different teams in the last 2 years, from Pittsburgh to Kansas City and most recently Miami, but he's still got something left in the tank at this point in time. Melvin Ingram, a very good football player there. So you have options there, and then, of course, there's still Justin Houston potentially as well. So one more name to get to before we wrap up, one more need. I want to know, name a player the Ravens should add this offseason, whether it's through free agency, whether it's through trades, the draft, whatever it is. Tell me in the comments section, name a player you'd like to see in a Ravens uniform next year. Last on the team needs list is the offensive guard spot. Look, the interior of the offensive line for the Ravens needs a little bit of help of some sort. You already have Tyler Linderbaum, your center for a very long time. But if you can get some help at those guard spots, that would certainly go a long way. And we bring this up because Ben Powers is a free agent. I would like to just bring Ben Powers back. He's in free agency. I think that pretty much takes care of the need that's there right now at the offensive guard spot. If you bring Ben Powers back, that I think would do you wonders. I loved what I saw from Ben Powers. He had a breakout year this year. But then, if for whatever reason you don't bring back Ben Powers, or maybe you want to look for some depth of sorts. Don't sleep on Osiris Torrance, the offensive guard from Florida. Started his career with the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns. He and Billy Napier made their way to the Florida Gators, and the SEC did not scare him at all. He was outstanding this year for Florida, an All-American, a do-everything guy, a real road grader, huge, just beast of a human there at the offensive guard spot. He's ready for the National Football League. Another guy, draft option, is Joshua Gray from Oregon State. And then two more names for you in free agency. Isaac Samoa, you'll see him in the Super Bowl playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then there's Dalton Reisner. And Reisner is one I think is very interesting because we've seen him play well in Denver, and his market value, he's kind of under the radar. He's not going to be that expensive. So he could be a good bargain buy, potentially, Reisner is in free agency. So there you have it. Those are the team needs for the Ravens and potential options to fill said needs when it comes to trades or free agency or the draft. Now I want to know from you, before we go, shout it out. What is the Ravens' biggest need this offseason? Let us know in the comments section below. You can follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Tyler Jones Live, talking about your Baltimore Ravens and those social media platforms. And I'll see you next time right here on the Ravens Rundown. All right, so that does it for all our segments today on this live edition of the Ravens Rundown. Chime in. I know we had some answers come in as we started that live segment there. Who's your favorite Ravens player of all time? Man, here's the other thing too, Rolly, I would say about this, is that I don't know how many people realize, I know people here in Baltimore and the flock know, but for all this great talent, for being such a young franchise, starting in 1996, 26 years ago, they have all the players they have. And the Hall of Famers, there's some franchises that have been around for 50-plus years that would love to have the history the Ravens already have.
Yeah, the Ravens have been one of the best franchises in football since they've been introduced to the NFL. It's truly been a masterclass of owning the team in the front office to having a great head coach and John Harbaugh. I mean, the franchise has done an excellent job of sustaining excellence, one of the more consistent franchises out there among the elite. Like, they hated Pittsburgh Steelers and New England Patriots.
Oh, yeah. Saw some answers earlier that we didn't get to on this that included Anquan Bolden. That's a sneaky good answer. Chris McAllister was one that came in. Adam says Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs. Very good answers there as well. On that front. So we will get out of here. Before we do, I want to make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. We're going to do these live shows every other Tuesday now at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. So if you missed today's show, you can still go back and watch this on demand at any time. We'll have these segments sprinkled out throughout the week as well, the VODs on the channel. But here is the subscribe link. Doesn't cost you a thing. It helps us grow, helps us do more content here for you on the channel if you guys subscribe. And hit that subscribe button. And I did say I would do some shout-outs for people that subscribe. So let me scroll real quick here before we go, and I'll shout some people out. Let me catch up on that. Let's see here. Brandon was subscribed. I see Guy from Newark subscribed. Also, Kenneth. I know Adam is always in the comments section all the time. He's a loyal subscriber. Appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you next time. Stay tuned to the Ravens Rundown. Subscribe, and have a great